Hello.
Hello.
I'm Rawn.
I'm David.
We're here with you again. Today we're going to talk about three basic subjects. First of all, Scorpia stirs. She's in her little cave. It's hot here. She had a long walk this morning. We're going to be talking about three subjects, all related. First will be the shaping of stones and the effect that this has, beneficial, detrimental, all depends. The geometric positioning of stones and working with different stones together, multiple stones together. And then third will be combining stones and metal, specifically metal wire, which is something I do a lot. So do you want to start with some comments about shaping, some examples?
Sure,
Of course we have lots of examples here.
By shaping the stones, what I'd like to say first of all is, for me, it's about what we're going to primarily talk today is about human shaping. But there's a shaping by nature as well that I wanted to talk to you about, just to show you the difference, because I think that difference is important.
Yes.
The shaping of stones in nature is the kind of thing that happens when rivers run over them, or when they're tumbled through the earth, long periods of time, and all the kind of elemental factors that go into their shaping by natural forces that exist all around them. They are resonant with all of those things and completely united with them, and that means that this shaping is completely harmonious with them. It happens without any real violence involved being done to the elemental being. Even when there is violence in what we perceive as things like volcanic eruptions and so on, that's still all part of the flow that they're living in. So that shaping is very harmonious. This is what I call my Jupiter stone.
Try to bring it into the camera here.
And it's just been naturally shaped to resemble Jupiter, even with the red spot. Just a stone that crossed my path one day. I wanted to show you that because it's an example of how nature has shaped something accidentally. It's corresponding to Jupiter because it resembles Jupiter, but the shaping of this stone has been done completely harmoniously with the elemental being, with the elemental familiar that exists within the stone. Nothing that has been done to it has been imposed upon it. Everything that has been done to it has been part of its process of being. This is very different to, for example, what we've done here. This is a piece of rainbow fluorite that's been shaped into a wand-shaped tube with rounded ends for massage. And here we've given a great deal of energy has been spent on forcing this being's body into a massage tool. And there, the shaping has not been harmonious with the being's essential nature, with its essential meaning. It's been forced onto it, and it's accepted that, with some struggle, no doubt, but certainly it was no match for the human will being imposed upon it. And that's an example of a disharmonious shaping. Now, I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm saying that it's not working in harmony. There's a difference.
As a consequence of this shaping, the way it's been cut, there is no flow of energy through this. It actually stops energy and condenses it and blocks its flow. But it has a natural flow to the stone itself, which is actually in this direction.
The passage of light gives it this flow as well.
So at an energetic level, it has disrupted the stone's natural state by changing it in this way. And in some instances, this can be, useful as a function, a human function. Okay, this now blocks energy. This now halts the flow of energy. This could be a use, but it was clearly not designed.
Yeah. Yeah, the rounded ends, the very smooth rounded ends and the smooth surface it really acts to be like a sink for energy so that it cannot move through or escape. It doesn't radiate, it collects and it holds. So that's one example of how you can shape something so that it holds energy rather than radiates it, but that's not necessarily what it wants to do.
Right. It is inharmonious in the event, yeah.
Right.
Another example of human shaping that is harmonious, and there have been lots of instances of it, are these two pieces. These are from Northern California. These are native stone chipped, shaped pieces. This is obsidian from Lake County, and this is flint, brown flint from Mendocino County.
The obsidian is still sharp.
Yeah, yeah.
After centuries.
Now, this is done harmoniously in true stone knapping technique. One has to work in harmony with the layers of the stone, just at the outset. But each stone holds within it something that the napper releases, that the stone chipper sees and brings forth. And it is an intentional shaping. It has altered the manifestation of the essential meaning of obsidian and brown flint. But it is a reshaping and a focusing that is in harmony with the essential meaning of these two stones, both as the type of stone that it is and the individual stones themselves. So human shaping is not always inharmonious. Most all modern shaping is inharmonious because it forces something foreign onto the stone. And this is a real good example, the rose quartz heart. It's just completely reshaped into this very strong human symbol, the pink heart. And it is locked in, and just a very, very small part of its essential meaning is allowed to come forth. And it's emphasized out of proportion to the whole of its essential meaning. At an energetic level, it has completely destroyed the energetics of the rose quartz. It can't absorb, it can't release. I mean, it does absorb, but it can't release anything unless it's forced out of it.
Right, and again, it's a sink that holds onto the energy, and will not radiate it, and the energy will stagnate. It will stagnate in here as well.
Right.
And so if you're using something like that, for example, and you're using it for anything magical, then you have to keep cleaning it out afterwards, because things will stick inside, they'll accumulate, and
sometimes they'll get physically discernibly murky.
you can see that happen. The light will dim, and then occlusions will appear, clouds will appear, things like that will happen, especially with quartz. I've seen that happen a number of times with quartz.
So, shaping can be of benefit, but most of the time it's detrimental. It's especially destructive to terminated quartz crystals. These natural double terminated quartz crystals that I work with are very expensive because they've got all these flaws that are visible, but at the same time such perfection. I can spend half as much and get one that's been completely resurfaced. All the flaws have been taken off, it looks perfectly clear, but it's dead. it really is dead. It's like it's been flayed. You know, all the skin has been ripped off, and it can't grow anymore. Its ability to conduct and transmit energy is stunted. It's dulled. So I don't ever really use them at all. It is just too much damage. They tend to hold, just like the rose quartz heart there, instead of transmit. And this is their essential meaning: is this transmission, is this flow.
And here you've got another shaping of this being by natural forces in a way. It's got this directional flow here. It's coming in this way and it's going out that way. And that has been given to it in part by nature, but when it was there, when it existed in her arms, it was part of a huge cluster. So there wasn't really just a single direction going this way, but much more of a collective awareness. So that directional flow of energy is not entirely natural. It's come about because it's been broken away.
Actually, no, this is a double terminated.
Right, yeah, this one. This one.
Right, right. But the terminated, single terminated, yeah. They've been taken from the community.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, now we will talk about using stones together and placing them and what is and is not appropriate. And what helps and what does not help. Some stones just don't belong together.
Right.
This is a good example right here. The pyrite and the rose quartz.
I think most people can get that just from immediately looking at the two of them together. That there's a dissonance that strikes you. A difference that doesn't harmonize.
Again, you know, go through this process with your stones, looking for their essential meaning, trying to connect with their essential meaning, getting to know them, communicate with them, and they will tell you these things. If you know these two stones in the way that we've suggested, you will know that they are antagonistic on some fundamental level with each other.
And it's very much like learning any language. After a while, you don't need to know or be familiar with every stone. You start to get an overall sense of what works together and what doesn't work together. Even if you've never encountered a pair of stones before, you'll still be able to tell whether or not they have this harmony or disharmony together. So it's a sense that you acquire through investigating the essential meaning of individual stones, that you develop that relationship with them that opens this awareness up for you to work with all stones.
An example of two stones that do really bond together are these two here. This is fulgurite, which is formed, we discussed this earlier, it's formed by lightning striking sand, basically forming a glass. And this is coral, calcium carbonate, the remnants, the empty house of the coral. Neptune and Uranus. And when we first put they just sort of came together at one point. And it's just so clear to our eyes, at any rate, that these two harmonize. This is the joining of Uranus and Neptune. And very powerful.
Yeah, it is.
And complete. So there's this dynamic of, do the pieces you're going to work with together actually belong together? And that's discerned by this process that we've been describing of sitting with your stones, getting to know them, getting to understand them and feel them.
And it gradually accumulates into a sort of universal sense a familiarity, if you like, with the mineral world and its beings in general, and how they interact together.
And what sort of purpose, if you have a purpose, like with these guys, there was no purpose here.
Yeah, I just put them together when they caught my eye one day, and at the same time, and I put them together because it immediately occurred to me that they needed to be together.
But if we wanted to create dissonance, we would do that.
Yeah.
We would put these two together intentionally.
Yeah. Right.
If we wanted to then amplify that dissonance, we'd do this. So now these quartz are all pointing in at this, feeding it energy, feeding both of these two components energy, and the dissonance increases. So we can create a pool of dissonance. We can also alleviate that dissonance by simply using the natural abilities, the natural flow of energy in different minerals. Rocks are predominantly of two types. There is the radiant, ones that move energy, and ones that, here is a really good example,
Hold and contain.
Hold, stop energies from moving.
And again, the difference is quite obvious. That this is radiant because of its behaviour with light, and this one is containing the energy because of its behaviour with light. But that one is also containing the energy because it's heavy.
Yeah.
It's holding down, it's pulling down. So there's that quality to things as well. But they do come in these two types of either containers or holders of energies, or radiators or amplifiers of energies. And that comes through their, whether they're opaque, whether they're transparent, also their density and their heaviness, and other factors that you can easily surmise.
Now, David and I were both discussing the other day how when we're out in the woods and we're working with rocks or whatever we're working with, basically at a magical basis, interacting with magically, it always involves number for us. We're always thinking of number when we arrange things, thinking of balance or imbalance, depending on what but this is always an issue.
Right.
Is it balanced? Is it imbalanced? Is this what we want? Do we need the imbalance to move something? Do we need the balance to hold something? And ultimately, it's always a question of beauty. Of, is it beautiful? And that's a completely, in one sense, subjective evaluation. But there is this objective beauty that is immediately recognizable by all creatures. And this is more the beauty that we're talking about, other than like the latest fashion kind of superficial beauty. But it's
prettiness.
Right. It's not prettiness. It's beauty, because sometimes a pile of dog shit can be, not so pretty, but beautiful.
Exactly. And it is, And the real sort of key there is it expressing its own inner nature, its own inner form? Is that coming out in its external form? Is that being expressed beautifully in its external form? So we have to not use our definition, a human definition of beauty. It's far too limiting. It's not something that's pretty, but is something expressing the brilliance of its essential nature. Is it shining through? Is it coming through? If it's coming through, then it's beautiful, and that's what we're talking about.
And an aspect of that beauty is it functioning as we wish it to? You know, especially when it comes to designing something that we're using for some sort of magical purpose.
Yeah.
And that's part of beauty here, functionality, you know. Is it expressing its essential meaning? You know, clearly, basically, it's the same thing as saying, is it functioning? Is this energy dissipating because I've put these crystals in this way? And this is a matter of perception. And you know,
we're beginning to talk now more, move into the area of things that we'll be talking about in the next video, but these analogies with numbers that we're using, just by instinct, because Rawn and I both feel comfortable and familiar with that. This has given this the number 3, so it equates both to Bina and Saturn for us, and other things come out of that association. So we're dressing analogies, we're dressing these things with analogies and giving them a shape, another kind of shape, a sort of abstract shape, as well as a physical one here. This is not just a physical shape, but an astral shape, which expresses a certain meaning to us.
And its significance.
Right. You don't have to use numbers, though. Any of the analogies that work for you and that correspond to things for you should be employed in this process.
We can get really Hodian about it here too, and really go beyond just simple arrangement, you know, two-dimensional arrangement like this, basically, and start pointing things into, you know, the heart of, you know, different angles. And this is what I do with the radiator, for example, that I showed in the last video. And this, again, is intuitive and symbolic, and it's highly functional in terms of energy flow, energy accumulation, these sort of uses that I make of crystals. And this is basic geometry, philosophical geometry, if you will. But it's not just philosophical. In other words, it's not just imbued with meaning and significance. It's also manifesting specific astramental energies, really subtle physical energies, astrophysical rather, not astramental. And harnessing them and moving them as carriers of the finer philosophical, you know, mental energies.
Yeah, they're vehicles. It's all about moving things or not moving them.
Right, and what they do with, like, what does this do with the energy that it collects? It does something very different than this does. Or than this does. All three of these are basically collective. You know, they collect energy. This does something entirely different with energy. And so it transforms the energy once it collects it in one way or another. About the only one that really does not transform energy when it collects it is clear quartz. So if I had a ruby, a perfectly clear ruby here, big crystal of ruby, it would collect the energy, the same energy that this quartz crystal collects, but it would radiate it transformed. It would redden it, essentially. So in combining them, there's these factors to consider. Do they belong together? What do they do together? And what do I want to do with them? Are they the correct ones for what I want to do? These two stones are the absolute correct stone for what the creator of these two chipped pieces wanted to do with them. Chipping obsidian, it's just, it's so easy. it just flakes off in these beautiful flakes and leaves these really sharp edges, and it's very predictable. It's the perfect stone for chipping, for carrying this intention of penetration and swift movement, and of sharpness. Okay? This is also the perfect stone. It's different. It's a flint. It's not a glass. It layers differently. It's much more difficult to chip a piece of flint because of the nature of the stone. But it achieves things and has durability that the obsidian doesn't. So they're both perfect for the intention that they've been filled with. Now we want to talk about combining metal with stones. There's two forms of metal really used with stones. One is wire, and one is the solid metal, like a ring or some piece of jewelry that is set in metal. Wire, linear wire, conveys energy along its length. A metal setting for a piece of jewelry condenses energy. It's not a linear conveyor, it's a condenser. It holds the energy, it builds the energy. So that diamond earring set in gold is holding on to and amplifying really all of that diamond energy. Right. But a diamond strung to a line of wire conveys that diamond energy.
All along the wire.
Right, exactly. In my work I'm using wires because my work is about conveying energy and moving energy, building energy. I use three kinds of wire. I use 14 karat gold filled wire, which is pure 24 karat gold wire is of course best, but so expensive that I don't use it at all. And 14 karat gold filled, which is really just a surface of gold on the wire, a very thin surfacing of gold, is totally sufficient for what I do. I use sterling silver wire, really high quality sterling silver wire. This is essential. The sterling filled wire is not sufficient. It really needs to be solid sterling silver. And I use a high grade copper wire, solid copper wire, uncoated, all that. The gold wire I use as a conveyor of the electrical fluid. It conveys the electrical fluid. The silver wire conveys the magnetic fluid. And the copper wire grounds and solidifies the field, the electromagnetic field, the combination of the electric and magnetic fluids. Stabilizes the field, right. That's using them linearly. If I coil them, what happens is it collects the energy, it amplifies the energies. And then I can move that amplified energy on again with a linear connection. So the electric fluid is not electricity in that sense, although electricity is a manifestation that contains a great deal of the electrical fluid.
Yeah, like the sun.
Right. It is the expansive force. It is the force that connects, that penetrates, that opens up. Okay? Then there's the magnetic force. And this is not exactly like the magnetism of magnets, but again, this is a manifestation of magnetic fluid. This is the constricting, the collecting, the forming, the bringing down into solid form. It's a slowing, an intaking force.
in the Hermetic philosophy, these two forces, the electric and the magnetic forces, it's their interaction that gives rise to the four elements. And the fire element has predominance of electric qualities in it, and the water element has the more predominant magnetic qualities in it. So fire and water display the electric and the magnetic fluids in different proportions, but they have electric and magnetic fluid is in everything basically, because it interacts with everything to create the four elements. So it's present in all things, but certain things emphasize it and conduct it. The sun is a good example of a cosmic fluid condenser for the electric fluid, and the intensity of that electric fluid that comes from the sun not just gives rise to all the life that we have on the planet and the life of the earth itself, but all the light and all the colour. And so the electric fluid is very kind of creative, but in its intensity, it forces you to look away. It's blinding. It's overpowering because it's actually expansive. It's pushing, in a way. The magnetic fluid, which you see in the full moon, when the full moon is really bright and there's a nice clear sky, especially when there's lots of stars around her, then she becomes incredibly magnetic in a sense that
you have to look at her.
You can't take your eye off her. And there's something about that light that's coming from her, that shape that she's in, and the setting, the clouds, the way she moves with everything, that she just becomes the focus of attention in an extremely magnetic way. Even the clouds seem to sort of dance around her, move around her. And when she moves into the stars, she swallows them whole, and they disappear and come out the other side of her. She's very magnetic. And you don't have to look away, you're drawn in. So the fundamental difference is between something being drawn into a centre and something which is being radiated out from a centre. But they are basically the same thing. It's not that the magnetic fluid is not creative, but its creativity is focused inwardly.
In terms of these crystals, these quartz crystals, this is the electric end, this is the magnetic end.
Because it's double terminated.
Right, yes, it's double terminated. Yeah. And so the energy moves into the magnetic end and out of the electric end. Now, metal wire has no polarity like this. You can just turn it one way or the other and it still functions the same. It all depends upon the flow of energy of the stones that you're working with. So since clear quartz has such a direct flow to it, it works well with wire as continuing a directional movement of energy. Now, if I put these two close enough together, they start to interact, and this is projecting into this. But at a certain distance, their fields disconnect, and there is no movement of energy from here into here. But if I string a wire between them, it connects the two of them.
But when you push them together, when you get them close enough together, at a certain point, when they begin to interact, there's a repulsion effect, because they're both radiant, and it's in that repulsion effect, just beyond that repulsion effect, that they become magnetic, and their fields collapse and join together.
And they become one.
They want to draw together, and you can feel this effect especially with quartz crystal on your hand. But just by moving it in and out from the palm of your hand, you can feel the physical effect of the quartz as it gets closer, touching your hand before it actually touches it. And that's very, very specific to quartz, especially to quartzes with shock, single terminated or double terminated points.
So I use these wires in the tools that I make. A good example is the gate maker, which is a Kabbalistic tool that I make that is used for exploring the Kabbalistic tree of life. It has 10 clear quartz spheres arranged in a tree of life pattern, and each one of these little spheres is tuned to a Sephirotic essential meaning in sequence. And each of these spheres are connected with all of the others by a series of wires. In some I use all gold, some I use all silver, some I use a combination of gold, silver, and copper, and others are a combination of these three metals depending on what is being connected. I'm using the gold to connect, to convey the electrical fluid, but also the most subtle of the energies that are involved, the mental, the essential meaning itself, the pure essential meaning, which is almost exclusively a mental entity. The silver is, again, conveying the magnetic fluid, but it's also conveying the astral energies, the meaning, the significance, really, of that is being conveyed. The copper is conveying the grounding, the earth, yes, the electromagnetic conjoined, the conjoining of the electric and the magnetic into this other thing that we call electromagnetic. And this is what the copper does. It also conveys the stabilization of the field, basically. And by that I mean the different levels of Sephirotic awareness. Kether, Tiferet, Yesod, and Malkuth are connected by copper and gold and silver, but it's the copper that is, yes, that is bringing them down the scale, kind of, and stabilizing. So I also use these wires in much more complicated geometries than the gate maker, but we'll talk about that in the next video. I use just these three wires. I Am Back wrote a question on our Facebook page inquiring about platinum wire. And I have no experience of platinum wire, using platinum wire, but my sense of platinum is that it's essentially dead in terms of its ability to convey anything. I find that the combination of gold, silver, and copper does everything that I need. It is capable of, together, the three of them together, capable of conveying any of the energies I'm working with. So I would say experiment on your own and see what you, if you can afford to, see what comes of it.
I've spent some time with platinum jewelry, platinum ring, not my own but other people's, and my sense of it was that it was very flat, not conductive. It didn't do what silver did in being a fluid condenser of the magnetic fluid, kind of holding things in this energetic way. It was flattening energy that it collected, making it less vibrant. I think that's what Rawn means by deadening. So that's the limit of my experience with it as well.
But like I said, I've never worked with platinum wire, and wire, just being in a wire form, can change the properties of metal. And accentuate the properties. So experiment and see. So that's us for this week, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think we covered everything we wanted to mention. And there's my little friend here.
Ah, yes, your little friend with the face.
Yeah, this is another example of, we talked very early on about how nature shapes things, and how different that is to the way we shape things. It's always harmonious, and how sometimes accidentally it produces things like the Jupiter stone that looks like Jupiter, and this one is a good example of a simulacra of a human face.
Maybe it'll show up on the camera.
Let's see if I can show you. Don't know if you can see that. but he's got little eyes and a little mouth.
Yeah.
And these things occur to us from certain angles, from certain places, and that's actually how a lot of the ancients viewed things. They didn't move a lot of rocks, but they came across them and saw them from certain angles.
Yeah. I noticed that you said he's got this little, and it's interesting that there is often the sort of genderization of stones to he or she, and I say just go with that flow, and whatever feels right, don't get stuck in it. The most beautiful stone I have ever seen was about this big in a creek bed in Sonoma County, and I was walking for hours along these creek beds, and I came across this stone, and it was a composite stone. It had all these tiny little chunks of all these different colored stones, just amazing. Yeah, I just sat there with it for a while, just absorbing its beauty, and thinking, damn, I wish I could take this home with me.
I think she thought, well,
She probably could have done that easier than the other way around. So next week we will be talking about magical ritual. What is our list here? Using magical tools and magical ritual. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. And hopefully Scorpio will actually make an appearance.
Yeah, I think we can say that she will. Okay. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.